Good evening, and thank you for watching. My name is Gary Grado, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's debate. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor for this event. As the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections hosts debates so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter most to them, and vote informed. Candidates that have a contested general election have been invited to participate in the debate. Candidates that have opted into the Clean Elections Clean Funding Program are required to participate, while traditional candidates are invited and encouraged to attend. Please note, candidates from both the Senate and House are participating in the debate tonight. As the moderator, I will ensure candidates have the opportunity to engage directly with their respective opponents. The questions that will be asked this evening are coming directly from the voters. Leading up to the debates, Clean Elections conducted outreach to voters across the state soliciting questions for the candidates. Voters that are watching this debate live, you can submit a question at any time, either by email, and that's debates@kc-a.com, text 928-362-1062, or phone 480-937-1297. Please specify if your question is for a specific candidate or for all candidates. We screen questions for clarity to eliminate duplication, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. The debate is scheduled for 1 hour, so we may not get to all audience questions, but we will do our best. Candidates, you will have 1 minute for your opening and closing statements and 1 to 2 minutes for your responses to voter questions. We encourage an open exchange of dialogue between opponents. If you feel the need to respond to another candidate's comments, you may do so. I may limit responses for time management purposes, and we remind the candidates and the audience that this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal tonight is to connect candidates and voters so our electorate may be informed. Candidates running for the Senate are Bob Karp, he's a Democrat, and our candidates running for the State House are Ronnie Maestas-Condos, Democrat, and Ken Moschetti, also a Democrat. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name, starting with Ronnie Maestas-Condos for opening comments, and we will progress from that starting point. So Ronnie, will you start the opening remarks, please?
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for joining in. Appreciate the opportunity that the Clean Elections Commission gave me. I actually didn't qualify for Clean Elections funding, but I feel it's important to participate and let people know where I stand on the issues. So I am running for Legislative District 14 as a Democrat, and I live in Hereford with my spouse, Christina. We've been together for 35 years, and we share a house with 4 cats. This is my first time running for political office, and that may give some of you pause. I am nervous too about this, but it's not about being nervous about not being able to learn or do the job as a legislator. I feel I can do that. It's more about convincing people that are undecided, or maybe they consider themselves Republicans, that we can't convince them why voting for a Democrat up and down the aisle, I mean up and down the ballot, that it's better. It would be better for us all around, for the economy, for health, and for social services programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. All right, let's move on to Bob Karp.
Thank you, Gary. I'm delighted to participate in this event, a candidate forum. Obviously, I think we're all disappointed that the Republicans didn't attend, but we have 3 great candidates here, and we're delighted to speak with the voters and tell our story. I moved to Cochise County back in 2005. I have been a businessman for over 40 plus years. I started in business after graduating from college in manufacturing, aerospace manufacturing. And then I decided to reinvent myself, and with 2 other people in my living room, we started a software development company that grew to over 50 employees and $2.5 million annual payroll. We were able to provide health care to everybody, to give them 401ks, and we never asked the government for any tax breaks or tax credits. So after that, I retired and moved to Cochise County and decided to open up a real estate brokerage after getting my real estate license. In 2015, I was the president of the Southeast Arizona Association of Realtors and the Multiple Listing Service. And then I was, in 2018 and 2019, on the Sierra Vista Planning and Zoning Commission. So I bring a business person's perspective to state government. I believe strongly that I can make sure that every tax dollar spent by government is spent wisely. And I think the reason I'm running is when you talk to the people of our district, they feel like they've been forgotten by our elected officials. They feel that our elected officials are more interested in what goes on in Phoenix than what goes on in Safford or Clifton or Vail or Douglas. So that's why I ran in 2018, and that's why I've decided to run again. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And Kim.
Thank you, Gary. As he said, I'm running for state representative for the District of 14. Very pleased to be here to answer questions about my candidacy. I am a retired public school teacher and also a military veteran. I've lived in Sierra Vista for the past 27 years, as well as having been stationed at Fort Huachuca twice prior to that with the Army. I am disappointed that our Republican opponents are not here as well, as I think it would have been a much more profitable and debate. Education is my passion, and public education is my priority. I believe that the opportunity for education should be open and available for all, because I believe a well-informed and well-educated public is vital to the success of any community. And I'm talking about all forms of education, from the cradle to the grave, from the mother's womb to the local nursing home. So being available to answer your questions is something that gives me great pleasure, that you are interested, if you're here, in what's going on in your particular district. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kim. So now let's move on to the first of the questions. As I mentioned before, when we were just talking, one of the questions, or a couple of the questions, are actually directed towards the Republicans, because the person who sent in the question said that they've heard from each of you on this issue. But we have other voters out there, and the Republicans are not here. So I'm going to go ahead and address this to each of you. And we'll just go in the same order that we just did for the introduction. So this question comes with a little background. The construction of the border wall across the San Pedro River, San Pedro Riparian National Conservation Area is costing us, the taxpayers, millions of dollars and being paid to an out-of-state contractor. Technology is available that costs millions of dollars less while still ensuring border security and not damaging our fragile environmental treasure. Heavy trucks and equipment are creating wear and tear on our state highways and county roads to carry materials for the border wall. And properties along the San Pedro River will have their views of the night sky obscured by the harsh lighting along the wall. I have heard arguments, so here's the question. What have you done to fight for your constituents to ensure that we are not unfairly bearing the costs of this federal project and that our tax dollars benefit companies and workers in LD14? Now, obviously, this is written for somebody who has already served, but go ahead and answer the question and, make it, what will you do?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I know we're talking about the border wall across the San Pedro, but I didn't quite understand what the question is.
Okay, I'll read it again. Well, the question, as I said, is written for people who have already served, incumbents. But what have you done to fight for your constituents to ensure that we are not unfairly bearing the costs of this federal project, meaning the border wall, and that our tax dollars benefit companies and workers in LD14? So since none of you are incumbents, I guess what will you do to fight for your constituents to ensure that they're not unfairly bearing the costs of this federal project and that our tax dollars benefit companies and workers in LD14?
Okay, thank you. Well, I feel the border wall itself is pretty politicized and pretty politicized issue. I support border reform or immigration reform. I guess that's why the wall was put up, to try to mitigate some of the problems down at the border. And specifically across the San Pedro River, that area is protected by the, by the conservation area there, the Riparian Conservation Act. I think it was put in place in 1985. And the federal government just went in there, and there was not proper oversight or public input as to the alternatives for what could go across that river. And if I were to get into office, I would immediately demand that that crossing there be redone or taken down. And as far as taxpayers, we're all going to be bearing the brunt of that. The administration, the federal government, is taking money from the Defense Department to illegally or unfairly build that wall. And if I'm in there, I'm going to be representing what the people in this area are concerned about and want, the majority of the people in this area.
Thank you, Ronnie. So, Bob, do you remember the question?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And the background. Thank you. And this has been discussed locally quite a few times. And my response prior to this on this issue was, the reality is it's the federal government. Let's be very clear. And the number one thing to do, and I'm going to be very political, is to vote Joe Biden into office and get Mark Kelly elected to the Senate so that we take control of the Senate as well as the presidency. Because you won't change policy with the Defense Department, DHS, ICE, without changing the administration. The other things that we can do locally are, we should be very concerned about eminent domain and the role of eminent domain in this process. We should stand up for local property owners who want to go to court on eminent domain. The federal government has decided that eminent domain does not play in this situation. They're overruling EPA laws and eminent domain laws. So this is critical. The last thing we can do, which our current incumbents have not done, is go to our congressional delegation, that's our Congress people and our two US senators, and really push to do two things. A, stop continued development of the wall, and B, get contracting reforms done so that money is, if money is going to be spent in this area, that it's spent with local contractors. So there are some things we can do, but number one, we need to change federal policy.
Thank you, Bob. Kim, floor is yours.
Well, I have to absolutely agree with Bob with what I was going to say. I think the first step that we have to take is to get different people into our federal government and our state government. Because as he said, nothing is going to change the mindset of putting this wall up and building it across the San Pedro River area. I know that our representative Ann Kirkpatrick has sent many a letter to Washington, through Washington and to the White House administration about this particular wall, based on her constituents and their complaints about it. I believe that what Bob said, if it is going to happen, then we definitely need to ensure that it is done locally, that the contractors are made locally, and that we use local people. But the first thing is to get rid of the current administration, and I believe that will cause good immigration reform to happen.
Thank you,
Gary,
Tim.
can we continue on with a little bit more conversation on this?
Certainly.
I just like to say a couple things, and I don't want to speak for the other two candidates, but I think we all think similarly. This amount of money that's being spent is outrageous, and as was put in the background, if we were going to spend money on border enforcement, and I think all of us do not believe in open borders, that's nonsense. That boots on the ground with and better technology is a better way to approach this problem. And it's a better economic benefit for our area, frankly, because you get supporting jobs to handle the technology aspect. So I think there's a lot of other things that we could be talking about instead of this obscene amount of money. And I believe it was quoted as $645 million. Does that sound right, Kim or Ronnie, on this?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. And I agree with you too. When we're talking about the economic aspect, the jobs that could be involved here with using technology instead of this border wall, there are so many ways now, so many new technological ways to keep track of who is coming across. And, you know, if nothing else, we can always hire more border guards to be in closer proximity to the area. I know the wall, it's an eyesore, and going over the San Pedro is not serving the purpose that it's even meant to serve, with having the gates open during the monsoon time, and thinking about clogging up the whole system. It's not going to serve the purpose that it's put there for. It is a political statement more than anything else.
Can I just do this one more point?
Sure.
That so we're talking about the economic impacts of having that border wall right now, and talking to some people in Douglas, they are actually being employed. So there is some local employment, there's some local benefit, but I think that's going to end. And what we need to do is show people of Douglas other opportunities and start bringing better economic incentives there besides just depending on that border wall. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Ronnie. We just got a question sent in to us on the border wall. So while we're on this, let's stick with it. What are your thoughts on the environmental impact of border walls? Do you think there's a way for the contracts to be distributed that benefit both political parties? Ronnie, you want to give it a shot?
So that contracts would go to Republicans and Democrats? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Do you think there's a way for the contracts to be distributed that benefit both political parties? So,
well, like I agree with Kim. I don't know about both political parties. I don't think contracts are based on political parties.
Yeah.
But I think it's more about the technology that's being used and the wise use of technology, and creating jobs from that. I think that would make everybody happy and benefit everybody of both parties. I would like to see more local a share of the financial benefits from that work. I would like to see it go more locally.
Okay. Bob, you want to pipe in?
Yeah. One of the problems with this whole notion of contracting, public works contracting, is it should never be political. It should never be about what state you're in, who you are, who you know. And this is one of the major problems that goes on. And we shouldn't be doing projects because they're politically correct to do them and they politically benefit somebody. So my attitude is to look at the environmental impacts, and I think that's a legitimate concern. And if I frankly don't believe that we need any more wall. This is we need to stop building. But if we're building, we need to take in the proper context of environmental laws, which we're not currently doing, and not make it a political issue of who gets contracts and where they're placed. Try to bring construction as close to the area as possible for the benefits of the people economically of the area. But like Ronnie said, and Kim said, we shouldn't be relying on the federal government to build a border wall so that we can get jobs. That's bad economic policy.
Okay. Kim, you wanna add to that?
I just want to address the environmental issue a bit because I think it's appalling and so unfortunate that so many of the EPA laws that we have in place were waived for this particular project. And that makes it very political. And as Bob said, it should not be a political thing. It should be something that's done for the good of the country. It should be a nonpartisan. Again, that the federal government is coming in and being in charge of this project and establishing the contracts that are involved and using federal money that was positioned for something else, namely the military, I think is also an appalling issue. But the environmental problem is huge, is very huge. If you've ever been on the border, at the border where the San Pedro crosses over, you'll know that the habitat that is there and the wildlife that passes through that area is one of the most important areas in the country, especially when it comes to birding. And this wall is imposing and intruding on all of that.
Okay. Real quick, we've only gotten a couple questions from the audience so far, but you know, for the thousands that are out there watching, just a little reminder that you can submit a question at any time. And once again, I'll remind you that you can send it by email to debates@kc-a.com, by text at 928-362-1062, or by phone at 480-937-1297. And there was one question I did skip over when I got into before I did the border wall questions. This one is, do you support legalizing medical aid in dying, the right for a terminally ill adult to obtain a prescription for a life-ending drug? Right.
I do support a prescription for a life-ending drug. I feel it should be monitored and regulated. And it's a very serious decision, but I feel that people should have a choice over their own bodies, and they should be able to make a decision with their doctor that if they are terminally ill and are expected to die within weeks or months. And if their life is just unbearable, I would support that a doctor would prescribe a life-ending drug.
Okay, thank you, Ronnie. Bob.
I believe Oregon has had a law in the books for maybe quite a while now, maybe as much as 10 years.
Mhm.
The concerns were always about would the process work? I think they require 2 doctors to approve any administration of drugs, and they have other safeguards in place. I fully support this notion. Obviously, the law has to be written in such a way that it protects particularly people that may not have mental competency to make the decision, and to protect the rights of patients and privacy as well. But yes, I would support such legislation.
Well, would you, real quick, Bob, I mean, would you introduce such legislation?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to give you a quick reason, and I'm going to go a little bit off topic. I said in 2018 that I wouldn't even, my first term in office shouldn't be about introducing legislation. There's too much legislation, frankly. There's too many bills, and a lot of it. And right now, with the pandemic and so many other things going on, I would probably prioritize and want the legislature to focus on other issues. But I think it's an issue worth considering. And if somebody else felt strongly about it, I would certainly listen to what was going to be said.
Okay. Kim?
I would just support it as well, conditionally, of course, that the individuals involved would not be taken advantage of. I think there are a lot of legalities involved. And as Bob said, the wording on a bill such as that would have to be very, very specific to ensure that those that might be mentally challenged or suffer from a mentally imbalancing disease were not taken advantage of by family members or outsiders. So I do support it, with the condition that it would be very specifically written based on that safeguards. Excuse me. As far as introducing the bill, it would not be a priority, but if I felt that enough constituents had written me or expressed an interest in doing that, then I would consider going ahead and sponsoring such a thing.
Okay. We have another question here that was addressed directly to Senator Gowan and Representative Nutt, but they're not here. The San Pedro River is the green ribbon of life in the heart of Madrean Archipelago ecoregion of southeastern Arizona, Cochise County. The strategic plan for the county outlines Cochise County priorities. As stated in the plan, Priority 2 focuses on environmental issues with regard to policy development, addressing water issues, and conservation and wildlife management for the San Pedro riparian area and the county. And the question is, how will your policies and plans safeguard and steward our globally important San Pedro riparian national conservation area?
So that's for me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, it's kind of scary what's happening in the world right now with environmental protections just being run over by the administration right now, disregarded. And I don't think it can be said too often that we really need to replace the administration that's in. And that's going to go a long way. I think one of the things that a lot of people are also concerned about is climate change, with the fires in California, which are being affected by droughts and aggravated by droughts, and that's impacting the migration patterns right now over the San Pedro, which is like Kim said, a major pathway for birds and other animals. So I think we need to increase and make sure those environmental protections are upheld. And it is going to take a new administration to focus on that and bring back those and strengthen those protections. And if I am elected, I would surely put my energy into doing that.
Thank you, Ronnie. Bob.
Can we broaden this a little bit into talking a little bit about water availability and the water crisis throughout Cochise and our entire district? I'll start by talking about the San Pedro riparian district. The state has not shown any leadership in this area, not at all. And our incumbents are totally uninterested in this. There's ongoing litigation with the Federal Bureau of Land Management, some third parties. Fort Huachuca has been involved in this over time. And so it is in the courts. So from a state legislature standpoint, there isn't a lot you could do to impact what the process is right now. However, our current incumbents have forfeited any participation in any solutions in Cochise County as far as the river goes. And more broadly, they have forfeited any interest in solving the water crisis in Southeast Arizona. So I think changing the state Senate and changing the state House's representation, at least you would get elected officials who would meet with the interested parties, the stakeholders in this dispute, and try to resolve the issues. I don't know how much impact they can have because it's now in the federal courts, but we need to be prepared to at least be an arbitrator of what's going on.
Thank you, Bob. Kim, you got any thoughts?
I'll go off on another little bit of tangent about water, I guess, and that in this area, I think we have allowed larger corporations to drill at their leisure and to pull from wells that are locally owned or personally owned. I believe in regulating those wells. I believe in regulating the amount of water that can be pumped. I believe in metering the wells and especially regulating the large corporations and how much water they can pull from under there. I think all of it goes back to the same source. When we're looking at the water underground, we're also looking at what's happening to San Pedro. And if drilling is happening around its area, water is being pulled from aquifers all over the district, and that impacts what is happening in the San Pedro. We're not getting the recharge that we should be getting because the water is being pulled off. So I guess I'm saying I think this is an issue for regulation and metering of wells.
Thank you, Kim. I guess
Could I expand a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's a really big, important issue, water regulation and the lack of it, and especially in rural Arizona. They have plans in other like urban areas for active management areas, and kind of controlling or confining where the agricultural areas are and giving them water. So for rural areas, it's a big problem because like Bob said, there's no regulation whatsoever. And Bob, if I could ask you a question, what is the federal lawsuit or whatever you just referred to that's happening?
It's complex and technical. It's been going on for, I think, over 10 or 15 years. And it has to do with the drawdown of water in the San Pedro riparian area. and whether or not the engineering that was done by the Army Corps of Engineers was correct or not when they gave in 2014 an okay to Fort Huachuca to continue drawing down water, or they're actually doing what they should be doing, frankly. But there's arguments about how much water is being drawn down, who's doing what, and whether or not the Bureau of Land Management should have given the okay to go ahead. And
do you know who's bringing, like, who are the parties that are interested?
Well, obvious. The parties that have gone to court are the Center for Biological Diversity and some other third parties as well. I think there's maybe a few people actually in Cochise County that are part of that. It's a complex issue. It's been going on for a lot of years. I'm just hitting the highest points of it. I think it's way more complicated than we can discuss tonight. But yeah, it's something that's been going on, and it could have a tremendous impact economically in Cochise County, no matter how it goes, to be honest.
Well,
may I add? Oh, sorry.
Oh, just one thing. I want to make reference to that. We do have some local control, or I don't know about control, but legislation. The city of Sierra Vista just put out a long-term, I don't know how many years, 10-year plan for their economic and fee structure, I think. And water was not part of anything that I saw in there of conservation or growth. They're talking about they're talking about development and growth, but I mean, here we have this scarce resource and they're not considering it at all. So I just want to put that out, that we have some say.
Thank you, Ronnie. So,
Okay. May I make one more point on that?
Okay, one more real quick one.
Okay, just that.
Yeah, so many questions.
I know. For Huachuca, I just want to give a push for Fort Huachuca. I think over the years that they have worked very hard at maintaining water conservation and the water they use, and using environmental programs and environmental building projects that does save on what they take and the water that they've drawn. And also, I think we're looking at Fort Huachuca, but we also need to look at our economic growth that is going on in this community. And this district and all over Arizona, this push to build new areas and not really looking seriously at the finite resource that they're taking from. That's it.
Thank you, Kim. Now, you said, if I recall correctly, you were a teacher, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll switch up the order a little bit just because of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
This next question. Because you were a teacher. So
okay.
What are your views in helping to support education in Arizona?
Oh my goodness. The first thing we need to do is adequately fund education. I think education is a priority in a society, the absolute priority, the highest priority. And I don't believe that our legislature, for years now, in all the years that I've been teaching, has taken education seriously, has taken the funding seriously. I think they have cut since 2009, especially. Probably about 38% of the budget has been cut from education since that time. Now, I know recently there has been a lot of to-do because of our recent walkout in Invest in Ed a couple of years ago, that the governor did put forth a 20% plan to improve teacher salaries over 3 years, 20% improvement. Unfortunately, that still doesn't take us back to the area to the 2009 levels for teacher pay. We are bleeding teachers in Arizona, and it is because of funding, and it is because of disrespectful view of teachers as a professional, I believe. Teachers put a lot of time in going to school, as much time as a doctor or a lawyer might put in, but they're just not treated with the same kind of professional respect when it comes to determining their salaries. And of course, then there's the ones that are really being hurt by the education funding is the children. I think a big problem that we have is Arizona's views on private schooling and the right to choose. I am a huge proponent of public schools. I believe that public schools should be offered equitably to everyone in the state, everyone in the country for that matter, because I think it's the basis of our society, being well educated and well informed. And I'm not talking everyone having to go to college, but it needs to be a choice. It needs to be there so that the availability is there for them to go to school if they wish to. So the funding needs to be there. We need the funding from K through 12. We need the funding, better funding in our state universities, which has gone up considerably since I went to college the first time. So I'm a proponent of public education. I think we need to take a big look at charter schools, the present ones, private schools. I don't think the state should be funding private schools. I don't think they should be funding charter schools for that matter. I believe a parent can choose if they want to send their child to school or not, but choosing the school that you go to should not even be an option or decision, because all the schools that we have should have equitable funding, no matter what population that school entails. If it's a lower income area or a higher income area, they should all be treated equitably.
Thank you, Kim. Ronnie, you want to give it a shot?
Pardon me?
I said, do you want to answer the question?
Sure. I would say first off, for funding, I like that Proposition 208, the Invest in Ed proposition that we're going to be on, that's going to be on the ballot and we're going to be asked to vote on. And I am in total support of that. I think that's a good solution for funding. It's going to place a 3.5% tax on incomes of $250,000 for an individual or $500,000 for a couple. It's estimated to bring in over $800 million a year. It's specifically targeted for education. It's not allowed to go to any other fund, not the general fund. We'll still be getting our funding from the general fund. In addition, then this proposition money from 207 too, but 208. So, and I agree with Kim about public education. I'm a very strong supporter for quality public education for every area in Arizona and the United States. And I think this Prop 208 will help fund that.
Thank you, Ronnie. Bob, you want to give it a shot? And then after that, I got a question just for you about education.
Oh, wow. Okay. The simple matter to this is that 95% of all children go to public schools in Arizona. It's a moral imperative to support public school education in this state. And the Republican legislature has, over the last 20 years, slowly eroded the tax base for public school education with tax credits for corporations, for what's called school tuition organizations, for individuals, as well as attempted expansion of the empowerment scholarship accounts, which are basically vouchers. And in 2018, we had something on the ballot, and people said very strongly, voters said, no, we're not going to continue on with this. We don't like it. We believe that the money is being siphoned away from the public schools. So my concerns are what the legislature should be doing is dealing with tax policy to make sure that the public schools are properly supported. And one solution is to start rolling back tax credits. Very difficult to do politically, but I will say that if I'm elected, I will not vote for any additional tax cuts or tax credits until we get public schools funded at the 2001 level after inflation. There's been big conversation that we're at the 2009 level, which prior to inflation. So we need to fund the schools properly. And the idea that we can accept the fact that our public schools are in the bottom 10% on teacher pay, classroom size, and academic achievement, and we accept this is untenable for me. No business would say, oh, I'm happy to be in the bottom 10%. And no employer is going to come to Arizona and say, I want my employees to have their kids in public schools that are at the bottom 10%. This is an important imperative for our own economic benefit here.
Thank you, Bob.
Now I'm done ranting.
All right. So this question was specifically for you.
Oh.
With Bob Karp's small business background, can he comment on the no on Prop 208 arguments that the tax would unfairly target small business owners? He talked about having a good-sized business, so maybe he moved beyond the small business owner concerns.
And this is the no argument, which I haven't read carefully. The argument's always about any increase in taxes is, oh, it hurts small business people. Well, first of all, I had a corporation, and I've always done business as a corporation. So it didn't pass through, and I'm getting technical, onto my personal tax thing. But my belief is if you earn a profit, in whatever business you are in, if it's passed to your personal tax return, so be it. Pay your taxes, pay your fair share. Don't say because I'm a business person that I won't pay taxes. There's too much going on where small business people may take advantage of tax breaks that the rest of the taxpayers cannot get. We constantly have the problem of shifting tax burden from businesses onto property owners, residential property owners, and individual taxpayers, particularly at the lower end of the tax of the income scale, who can't avoid taxes. So I don't think that's a legitimate argument against 208 from my viewpoint.
Okay. So one of the issues that has been driven home during COVID has been the lack of internet accessibility throughout our legislative district. As a member of the state legislative team, how would you handle this? Let's get back into the original rotation and start with Ronnie.
Well, I think if we could pass that Proposition 208 for education funding, that will give money to school districts for improving the infrastructure, and internet accessibility is very important right now, especially in COVID. But even after we get the vaccine and we're back on recovery, it's going to be important for rural Arizona to stay up with technology, and it's going to help economies. And I really support that. I mean, out here, I live in rural Arizona, and my broadband isn't that great.
You're coming in good tonight, Ronnie. Bob.
I agree that with Ronnie about the fact that the internet is an important aspect, particularly with the pandemic and the challenges of remote learning. There are a few things that state government can do. They can try to get federal grants for rural extension of high-speed internet. One of the things that concerns me is that the governor did a budget briefing at the beginning of the year, obviously way before things changed. And they proudly touted the fact that they were going to extend a high-speed internet line down the I-19 from Tucson down to Nogales. And I asked the question, well, are you going to go out the I-10 east towards the New Mexico border? Oh no, why would we do that? So this brings up the problem again of our current incumbents who do not fight for funding for infrastructure properly. So we could get a high-speed line along the I-10, which would really help the northern parts of Cochise, the eastern parts of Cochise, certainly the southern part of Graham County to get a better internet service.
Thank you, Bob. Kim?
Well, to segue on that, the federal grants and subsidies that, yes, and subsidies that we have had billions of dollars in Arizona given to large corporations. Most of those federal grants and subsidies have gone to large for-profit companies who are supposed to extend the broadband across the rural areas and across Arizona in needed areas. But unfortunately, when you get into rural areas, there is not the profit there for them to extend them past the areas where there is large population. And so the ones who are being hurt are the ones in the rural areas. They are not getting the broadband that they need. And states can step up in this, as Bob said, can step up in this area by providing more funding for broadband in rural areas. I just lost my thought. Okay. In the governor's initial budget prior to COVID-19, there was a certain amount of money that was allocated for broadband in rural areas. But when the skinny budget was passed by our legislature, it was one of the things that was deleted. And it's extremely important, not only for education, but also for healthcare issues and keeping in touch during the COVID-19 pandemic.
All right. Well, let's go from broadband to marijuana. So, what are your thoughts, candidates? What are your thoughts on Proposition 207?
Who should start? What do you want?
Recreational marijuana.
Kim.
I get to go first once. Okay. Recreational marijuana. I support it for a number of reasons. One, because I think along with alcohol, it's a personal choice for an adult. And secondly, because we have such an issue and have had an issue since the 80s with illegal products such as marijuana coming across our borders, and people that are dealing illegally in these drugs making billions of dollars. Why don't we use that for our own state? So I believe we have recreational marijuana, and it is monitored and under licensed sellers, that it can be a very big financial subsidy for the state government. I think that the state needs to control it and make sure it's licensed and make sure it's maintained properly, and that it can be a personal choice for adults. I know that there are those that think, oh, well, children are going to get into it. You have to be very specific, limiting, and I know the bill talks about that, limiting the way that the product is presented. You don't want to present it in such a form that, like gummy bears, that's appealing to a child or an adolescent. But it's the same as alcohol, too. A child can get into alcohol just as easily as a child can get into a drug. And it's up to a responsible adult to use the product responsibly. I think that's the main reason that it should be something that is a personal choice, and that it is a huge area for revenue for our state.
Well, I'll throw a little something extra at you there, Kim, and the other candidates can address it as well if you like. I read an argument the other day that Democrats should oppose the proposition because we've created another multi-billion-dollar industry that takes advantage of young people and is still going to create because of the taxation, is still going to create a black market. I mean, are those legitimate arguments, or what do you think about that?
I think that might possibly be a legitimate argument with the taxation, that you might have black market. Same way, maybe prohibition in the 30s. As far as teenagers, young people, and the draw there, I think as with anything, as it's been over decades and decades, that it has to be something that is discussed with the parents or other adults of those children. It has to be something that is not buried away and hidden and just made a big no-no, but you have to be educated and informed about drugs just as you do about alcohol and the effects that it can have on you. You need education. And I think that sometimes it falls to the schools, and sometimes it falls to the parents. And I really think that adults need to step up and ensure that if young people are educated about this, that we give them enough credit to make an educated decision about whether to use some of these products or not.
Thank you, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting close to our hour, and we'll go over, of course. But just like to remind the candidates to, keep your answers brief. Still got a few more questions from our voters, and it's your turn, Bob.
In 2018, we didn't get, there was a legalization of recreational marijuana that didn't make it onto the ballot. And I was asked about it at the time, and I was opposed. And I said, California had just legalized, Colorado had legalized a little bit earlier, and I wanted to see what was going on in an adjacent state with a huge population. I am in favor of it now. However, I'm not thrilled with the methodology. I think we should have legislated it rather than putting it on the ballot, because my feelings are this is a giveaway to large corporate interests in the way the licensing is handled. And this is a major concern to me. They've made it so that the law was written by large out-of-state corporate interests who want legalization. And the law isn't the best thing that we could have done. Unfortunately, the legislature wasn't interested, so here we are. I will support it, and I will say our one additional concern is the federal government still outlaws marijuana, and because of that, we don't have a banking system to support it. And this is a cash business where you really don't have any idea where the money is going, and I don't see how the state is actually going to know how much tax they're going to collect. So there are issues here, but the concept of legalization of recreational marijuana, I agree with.
Okay. Well, any thoughts on it, Ronnie?
Yeah, I'm coming more from, well, I do support it, legalizing recreational marijuana. I look at it more from a criminal justice reform, taking away the harsh penalties that are associated with it, decriminalizing it, basically. That would be more my concern. And I think also that people are using it. So I think it's important that we regulate it and tax it and make some money off of it. And they set up a pretty good system or they delineated ways in which where the money would go, how it would be allocated, and who would be in charge of it. And that's all stated in that initiative. And from what I've read, I support it, and I hope it passes.
Okay, thank you, Ronnie. Next question is, what ideas do you have for new business and jobs? You want to go first, Ronnie?
I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
Okay, the question is, what ideas do you have for new business and jobs?
Oh, great. Great question. I support Joe Biden's Build Back Better. He's got a great program for bringing back unions, strengthening unions, for improving the economy and people's lives. You know, making that $15 an hour minimum wage would help a lot. And I think the Green New Economy philosophy is going to send a lot of jobs our way. It's going to create training and incentive for businesses to especially come to Arizona, because we are the solar capital of the United States. So that would be my idea.
Thank you, Ronnie. And my apologies to the voter who sent this in, because it has in parentheses, please begin with Mr. Karp. That must be the fan out there.
It would be interesting to know why I should begin, but okay. Quickly, because we're running out of time, I just want to say something about the current job situation. The Economic Opportunity organization here in the state, Department of Economic Opportunity, published in 2018 a jobs projection for 10 years, and for Cochise County they projected 28 new jobs each year. In Graham County they projected 154 new jobs each year, and in Greenlee County 39. And we didn't hear a word from any of our elected officials about only 28 jobs a year in Cochise County, and they have no plan to solve this crisis. And my feelings are, I have a 5-point plan on this. I won't go into full detail, but I believe in expanding the port of entry in Douglas, building an inland port outside of Wilcox, which will bring jobs, warehousing jobs and transportation jobs to southern Graham and northern Cochise. I believe we should create a 4-year college in Graham County, which will attract additional business and training for solar, mining, and agriculture, and sustainable agriculture. And I also think that we need to create a 10-year regional economic development plan for this area. There are various economic development organizations here, and it seems like all of them are basically lobbying groups for various special interests. The state government should be pushed by our elected officials to really sit down and create a regional economic development plan. That's the high point on it.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Kim?
Yes, I agree with the economic development plan. I would say that small businesses, as I believe Bob might have been alluding to, technological jobs and small tech companies opening up. I think we are wide open for that type of renewed economy. I also have to agree with Ronnie on the solar power. We are the solar capital of the country, and we really need to look at alternative energy sources. And I think we've got so many young people and so many scientists and so many new technology people coming up that can be involved in starting new businesses in just that way. Also, the Douglas Port of Entry that Bob pointed out that I was going to mention as well. I talked with the mayor of Douglas quite extensively about that project, and it is something I know he pushed and he He talked about if I was elected, would I push for that too? Yes, I would, and I think that would really increase the economy around that area. We need a larger port of entry. We need to move the big trucking, the big trucks that cross to a different point and have just a personal vehicle crossing in one point away from where all of the trucking industry is coming across the border. So definitely increasing the Douglas port of entry.
Funny you should say that, because that was the next question. Do you
Uh-huh.
have anything else to say about the port of entry? Because the question was, what are your thoughts on supporting the new proposed commercial port of entry in Douglas? Do you have anything else to add to that, to what you ended your answer with last time?
Just that I think it's a necessity, and not just for jobs too, but to improve the wait time. I had, when I was in Douglas and talking with people, talking with the mayor, the wait time to come across the border is unbelievable, and it's damaging. It's personally damaging to people's vehicles, to people that are on time constraints, to people that are trying to work across, that go back and forth and are working on this side of the border, the other side of the border. So separating and starting a new commercial border crossing is a very, very wise decision in many ways.
Okay, Ronnie, you got any thoughts on the Douglas port of entry?
Yeah, I would support that expansion, and it would definitely bring economic recovery back to Douglas. I'm just kind of wondering, I know right now with COVID, I think the border is totally closed. So I think that's a hopeful thing for people to think about and start planning for. And I'm excited about it, and I hope it does come to pass.
Thank you, Ronnie. Bob.
Here's the problem with what's been going on with the port of entry. It's been on supposedly a preliminary budget projection, a 5-year projection for like 10 years. And recently, last year, Yuma got $285 million to expand their port of entry. And Columbus, New Mexico, which is this little tiny town in New Mexico, I'm not criticizing them, they got $85 million for modernization of their port of entry. Why is Douglas still waiting? And my belief is our local elected officials do not push our congressional delegation hard enough and really make some noise about getting the proper funding. If I get elected, I will put together a local commission, and we will go lobby our entire congressional delegation to get the money, to get on the budget and get a firm commitment. I am hoping that in the first 2 years that I'm elected, that we will break ground on the expansion of the port of entry.
Okay. Ronnie, you have something to say?
Yeah, I have a question for you, Bob. So why do you think they're not supporting expansion of that border entry?
I don't think it's that they're not supporting it. I think that would be an unfair thing to say. I don't think it's a high priority. I think you see a lack of interest. There have been some cases where and I'll give credit to McSally when she was our congressperson. She came down and she really was involved in it, and the governor was fairly involved. But without consistent long-term pressure, it isn't going to happen. And our three incumbents don't seem interested at all. So I think it's a matter of saying that this is a top priority.
Okay, one last question, and then we're going to do your closing statements. Can you comment on the important role of the Arizona Corporation Commission in improving internet access?
Oh, that's interesting. Where do you want to start? Start with Kim.
Go ahead, Kim.
With me. Okay. The Arizona Corporation Commission improving internet access.
Yeah, you're all running for the legislature, and the Corporation Commission is another, government body, but voter wants to hear from you.
Okay. I don't know that I could actually speak to exactly what they would be able to do in that area. I have to plead stupidity here because I don't understand where the question is coming from. I don't know that the Arizona Corporation Commission has a hand in determining rural broadband in the area.
Oh, they regulate utilities. So
the what?
They regulate
I'm sorry?
utilities.
Yes, they regulate utilities. Okay. So perhaps they need to take a look at how the federally funded subsidies and grants are being distributed in the area. Maybe that's something that that they would look at. I have to plead that I'm not really knowledgeable on what it is that the Arizona Corporation Commission, all of the things that they do. So I'm going to have to look into that, and I'm going to pass it off to someone else.
Ronnie?
Well, my first thing would be is vote for those 3 Democrats that are trying to get on that commission, because their focus is going to be those type of things. Shay Stanfield, Bill Munn, I forget his name, and I forgot the other woman, that are the incumbents. So I think if we get those people on the commission, that they will be a lot more willing to do these kinds of things of expanding broadband, looking into alternatives and solutions. And I think they're also accessible to their constituents. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Bob?
As you were saying, Gary, the Corporations Commission regulates utilities. However, most cities handle internet access through direct licensing of various people like Cox or Liberty, various internet providers. So where the state can play in this, as far as I know, and a Corporations Commission has it, is of getting the infrastructure for high-speed internet by encouraging or bullying large utilities to provide the infrastructure for more competition for high-speed internet in rural areas. You take the electric utilities; they're the ones that run lines. They're the ones that natural gas companies. They're the ones that dig trenches and put in the infrastructure for a high-speed internet. So I think the Corporations Commission can play a role, and I think that they can reallocate some of the taxes that are collected from, for example, telephone companies, landlines specifically, and electric companies to build out the infrastructure in rural Arizona.
Thank you, Bob. All right, we've come to the time of night where each of you can give a couple minutes for your closing statement, and we'll go back to the original order of alphabetical order. Ronnie?
Thank you, Gary, for hosting us and providing this platform where we can get our message out to LD14 constituents. And I want to thank a lot of people, beginning with Bob Karp and Kim Moschetti for running. I'm really pushing for them to get in there. Bob is just I don't know what you call him. He's a resource, and he's smart, and he would be the best choice. David Gowan didn't even show up. So that shows you what your choices are. And Kim is great on education. She's going to be a good fighter. And me, I'm just going to show up and be there for you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. Bob?
I needed to unmute. Something interesting. I see these billboards for the 3 incumbents, And at the bottom of the billboard, it says in big, bold letters, jobs, economy, working for the people. And I say to myself, what have you done? That's just empty words. What have you done to do any of those things? And my concerns are that, as I said at the opening, people here feel that they've been forgotten by their elected officials. They feel that our elected officials are more interested in Phoenix and the special interests than what needs to be done here. And I have a plan for jobs in the rural part of the state. I'm very concerned about public education, and yet they're silent on these issues. Where are they tonight? They're not here. And I truly believe in bipartisan government. It's easy to say when you're in the minority, but if the Democrats were in the majority, and I hope they are in either the Senate or the House or both, we should be working together to get agreement and solutions rather than getting wins and being able to have slogans. So I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak to everybody. I do think it's time for a change, and I hope people will consider voting for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And Kim, you get to close out the night for us.
I'll wrap it up. Okay, thank you, Gary. And thanks to everybody that participated, Clean Election Committee, holding the forum, and all the audience out there for wanting to be informed. I would have liked to see my opponents here, so I could have asked them the questions, such as Bob was saying about that same billboard. What are those jobs, and where are they, and how are you going to make them happen? I'm not saying I have answers. This is something new, and I am a novice at the political life, but I do believe in service, and I think that this is a job that entails showing service to your community. I serve my country in the military. I serve my community in educating children in your future. I have taken care of the children that are going to choose your nursing home, and I believe that I made a good choice and have made them productive citizens. I want to continue to serve the people in this area, and especially in LD14 as the state representative. Even though I am new and a novice to the job, I think I can be a voice. I work hard, and I'm passionate, and I am a leader and a listener, and I will research whatever I do not know. I will always put the interests of the people first, thinking about what it is that they want to happen, and do my best to make that happen in a nonpartisan way. I'll be there for my constituents and do my best to ensure the best for them and this district. So I hope for their support. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kim. And this concludes our debate. To our candidates, we thank you so much for participating. And to the voters, we thank all of you who took the time to watch the debate and inform yourselves for the November 3rd election. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is your source for nonpartisan voter information. We encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for all your voting needs. Thank you very much and have a good evening.